If your idea of what Congress was like was a bunch of geriatrics sitting around and talking about the old times and eating Werther's originals, then we have some news for you. It is that, definitely. And that's actually kind of worse than that, but also sometimes it's more exciting than that. So Politico talked to a couple dozen members of the Senate and the House and got them to dish on a little bit of stuff that borders on the scandalous and definitely the critical. They're willing to say things when they're somewhat being anonymous about it, about the cognitive capabilities and the drinking habits of their colleagues that I thought was pretty exciting. So Representative Sidney Kamlanger-Dove said, "I was surprised at how thirsty my colleagues are, and I don't think that one's about the booze. I think there's some other stuff going on in the halls of Congress, which theoretically could produce." Remember, Madison Cawthorn was saying there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Apparently there's some thirst as well, and we'll return to that. But let's talk about the literal thirst. So this is Representative Jim Himes, a Democrat, who said every time we do an 11 p.m. vote, a minority of the chamber has a 0 blood alcohol content. Now that's different than voting drunk. I don't think I've ever seen somebody demonstrably drunk on the floor. And that's true. Pete Hegseth is often a different building. It's not the Capitol building where he works. It's a different place entirely. Representative Don Bayer said, "Well, I've seen one Republican who, unfortunately for you, has to go unnamed, show up drunk a number of times. There were 1 or 2 Dems I thought might be high on something, but not drunk." And look, I understand that if you hear that they're drunk or they're high when they're voting, that you'd be like, well, this probably isn't the best idea for this deliberative body, but I wanna set your mind at ease about it. They're not making the decision about how to vote themselves anyway. And whether they're drunk or not, they can take marching orders from their donors. Like, they don't need a lot of cognitive capacity to do what Big Pharma wants them to do. So don't worry about it too much. But anyway, Representative Steve Cohen said this: "I have never seen anybody drunk on the floor. I don't think anybody drinks around the floor. I knew a couple of guys that might have had a drink, but the guys I knew that had a drink, they never showed it. They could hold their liquor well." Okay. Again, you're still drunk, so you're not really reassuring me. But anyway, Representative Nicole Maliotakis was asked about that Madison Cawthorn thing, about the cocaine-fueled orgies, and also about Matt Gaetz and all that he's done. And she said, "I would say DC is more like Veep than House of Cards. We've had a couple of Veep moments in my office, and I feel like that demands more details. What happened in your office that was like Veep, and which episode were you mirroring?" But we don't know for sure. And finally on this, Representative Eli Crane says, "Absolutely, we're human beings, right? We're all sinners. So to even put on the facade that we're not regular people that are tempted and do stupid things is laughable, it's ridiculous. So don't act like your S doesn't stink." And that also demands a follow-up question, maybe from Representative Eli Crane's spouse. What is this about sinners and being tempted? And he's not necessarily saying him, but is it a colleague? Is it a staffer? What did you walk into in your office late one night that you're saying stuff like that? Now that said, we'll turn to the cognitive capacity stuff in just a sec, JR, but what do you think about their apparent drinking, maybe swinging ways?
It was the first thing you brought up, Madison Cawthorn, and many people, even folks who dislike the dude, kind of wrote it off. Like, oh, he's on his way out, he's so upset, but he wasn't even necessarily on his way out yet. He was on the skids. But they got really upset at that point. And that's what perked my ears. I was like, wait a second. Once he mentioned the drug-fueled sex orgies of all these 82-year-olds, that's when they got upset. That's when they're like, okay, we're done with this guy. This guy is of no more use to us. His lips are way too loose. So he went through all of these revelations and suddenly people see what's going on. But I think it's okay to pull back that curtain because I think there's too many people who don't understand that these are just some random folks. They honestly don't fully know everything that they're supposed to do. You mentioned how their decisions have already been made for them. Many of them already bought off. Many of them been lobbied by major industries that told them how to vote, wrote out their speeches. They don't do anything. I gotta be honest, they don't do a lot. They're really good. Like when I was living in LA, and I spent some time in DC, I noticed, I said, whenever you see a lawmaker who's known enough around town, they act a lot like celebrities in LA. When you happen to see them out, they if it's the right energy, they want to be seen. If it's not, they want to duck away because, oh man, it's too much paparazzi might see me and they might ask me a question I don't want to answer. But then again, I do want to be seen because, the reason I'm here is because I like to be seen and I have an ego. All of them are just some regular, many times boring people who now have their jazzed on their position and their power. All they work for is to continue to have that power. So they'll do whatever it takes to keep it. And while they're not doing anything else, why wouldn't they be the same unprincipled people that would do stuff like this? Whatever it may be, being drunk on the House floor, high on the House floor. And did you ever notice, John, when someone's running like a vote, there's always someone that steps up and whispers to them and tells them what to say, especially if there's like some kind of a conflict or a procedural change. They'll go, and they'll repeat exactly what some person who actually knows how everything runs, and they'll say it. I was like, they don't know anything. They don't know anything except Jack Daniels. I've always wondered,
wouldn't it be more efficient to just elect that person?
That's what I was thinking.
And maybe somebody whispered to them, but then elect that person. Let's get these middlemen out of government.
Those are all the career government people that Donald Trump and them want to get rid of because the wheels have come off.
Exactly. Anyway, on the cognitive capacity, so Representative Jim Himes said, there's no question that somewhere between 6 and a dozen of my colleagues are at a point where they're, I think they don't have the faculties to do their job. 6 to a dozen. And a House Republican said, I have a difficult time sometimes telling between the deterioration of members and a handful who are just not very smart. And great burn, and also I totally understand that. There's some that, like I would imagine there's something wrong with their brain. I don't want to be more specific because she sometimes watches the show. But anyway, and then just one more. Asked who their least favorite person, their colleague was. Representative Sean Casten said, the single least impressive person I have ever met in this job, or any job I've ever had, is Kevin McCarthy. He is just a vapid shell of a human being who stands for nothing, who never took his oath seriously. That dude has been out of office for a couple years at this point, and the grudge is still white hot.
Is Casten a Republican? I'm gonna look that up.
I guess so. So anyway, there's a lot more on Politico. You can see all they quiz them about a bunch of different stuff, but some of that was interesting. I like to see a little bit of honesty out of them, even if some of the honest comments had to be done anonymously.
He's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat? Okay, well, either way, I agree with him.